Hiya, it's the Sport Tea. I'm Josh Sexton, spilling the tea behind the biggest stories in sports. A civil war might be about to break out in one of the most popular women's sports leagues in the world, and the power move that sent a shot across the bows might not even hit your timeline yet. So allow me to take you through it and explain. So I just want to start by saying thanks for all the support on the first video and on the inception of this show idea. As I mentioned in my sort of intro video, this is not a subscription-based model. This content is going to be for free. It's not going to end up behind a paywall. It's always going to be for free. The idea behind it living on Patreon is just that if you want to support me in my freelance journey, you can do so for as little as £1 a month. If you translate it into dollars, that is how you pay £1 a month, by the way. I've noticed that people are doing it in pounds, and that probably charges you, I think, about £1.50 in the end. So if you want to get closer to just £1, which I'm absolutely more than grateful for, I'm really grateful for all the support, as I mentioned so far, then you can do that by changing it to dollars, and that would be, just £1 a month. And hopefully then I'll be able to produce more of these kind of videos as we go on and as more of that support comes in. But another thing that sort of caught my eye today, like one of what I would class as one of the biggest stories, certainly in my sporting world, is a couple of quotes that came out sort of over last night, the night before, from the WNBA. So one of the WNBA's best players, and she's the vice president of the Players Association as well, Napheesa Collier. She has come out and thrown down the gauntlet to the league's commissioner, Cathy Engelbert. And this comes ahead of crunch negotiations over the collective bargaining agreement, which I'll come on to explain more about, that will have a big say in the future of the league. So this collective bargaining agreement then, it is, for those who don't know, an agreement between the Players' Union and the league. These agreements form a crucial aspect of the closed league model that the majority of American sports leagues adopt. So unlike the Premier League, who do have a collective bargaining agreement that is with the PFA, but they just look after things like player welfare and stuff like that. I think you probably know or are familiar with the sort of, the PFA by now and what they've looked after. You see cases like Clark Carlisle, but there's also been some bad cases really where the PFA have not necessarily looked after player welfare and have been criticised in some quarters, but they don't deal with anything financial, whereas these agreements in the States dictate more sort of important financial decisions as well, like salary caps and revenue shares and so on. So why is this an issue? Why is it an issue that there's any sort of argument over this collective bargaining agreement? Why is it an issue that one of the best players in the league has come out and sort of criticised the league's commissioner? Well, the issue within what Napheesa is sort of arguing for, and what a couple of the WNBA players, in fact a lot of the WNBA players, have come out and been arguing for, is that they currently only receive 9.3% of what is categorised as basketball-related income. Meanwhile, in the NBA, it is between 49 to 51% of the basketball-related income that the whole league gets. So that can be things like ticket sales and all these kinds of things. I believe the only thing it doesn't include is when expansion teams buy into the league, and things like player fines, they go directly to the league. But sort of basically anything else in between is classed as basketball-related income. So a number of these WNBA players have been battling for this over a long period of time, and it's been an issue throughout women's sports really. I actually spoke to a good friend of mine, Sam Yip, who I met while being part of the credentialed media in the NBA, covering the LA Clippers, and his co-author Rich Nichols, who wrote a book called All Things Being Equal, The Genesis, Cost and Aftermath of the USWNT's Equal Pay Battle. So that's about the US women's national team over in the soccer or the football, whichever one you want to call it, arguing for more equal pay there than what the US MNT were getting at the time. And this is not there's always been lazy arguments that come out whenever these kinds of arguments are made, because you're just going to get, basically misogynists who come out and argue, well, the men's game's so much better, the men's game brings in so much more revenue, why do the women deserve more money? Well, the issue is that we're arguing here, and that the USWNT we're arguing for, and that the Players Association in the WNBA are arguing for, is percentages. They're not asking to get the millions and tens of millions that the NBA players get every single year. They just want a fairer share of their own revenue, because of course the NBA makes more money than WNBA. That's reflected in the most recent joint TV rights deal between the two leagues, because the NBA owns the trademark and the intellectual property behind the WNBA. So actually, when I put on this hoodie today, the label in the back of it is an NBA label, even though the hoodie itself is a WNBA hoodie. So there's no reasonable excuse, really, that its players should therefore see a higher percentage of revenues for doing the same job in relative terms, because, night after night, the WNBA players are doing the exact same thing as the NBA players. They're going out, competing, fighting, blood, sweat and tears to enhance the product of the WNBA, which has been on an astronomical journey in recent years, thanks to players like Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese and Paige Beckers. And this is the thing, like what those three players in particular, but what so many before them did, even as far back as, Maya Moore, Lisa Leslie, Dawn Staley, what they've all done for, not just women's basketball, but the sport of basketball as a whole, for women's sports as a whole, is on a scale which you could argue is only matched, particularly in sort of recent times in the men's basketball side of things, by the global impact of someone like Victor Wembanyama from recent men's draft classes. There's no one else in the recent draft classes who even touches the sides of the impact that Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese and Paige Beckers have been able to have, and the fan bases that those guys come with. You only have to go over to their Instagram pages and you look at, Cooper Flagg even has got less followers than any of those. Victor Wembanyama has got less followers than a couple of those. I believe it'll be Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark that Wembanyama has less followers than. So that's quite a crude way of looking at it, and a small scale way of looking at it, but it sort of makes my point for me. But then I want to dig into the figures, the sort of money behind those three players in particular and a couple of the others that I mentioned, because Caitlin Clark was drafted in 2024. She has earned under $155,000 from the first 2 years of her contract with her team, the Indiana Fever, even though she's been one of the best players in the league in that time. Similarly, Paige Beckers, who was drafted in 2025, so at the start of this WNBA season, which is about to come to its conclusion, she will earn just over $159,000 from the first 2 years of her salary as a member of the Dallas Wings. So she's obviously only played out a year of that so far, but what she's going to go on to earn in the next year of that will only equate to just over $159,000. You might be thinking, that's nice. Let's compare it to the NBA guys, because the last two number one picks, so Paige Beckers and Caitlin Clark were the last two number one picks in the WNBA. The last two number one picks in the NBA, Zachary Reese-Share and Cooper Flagg, they're going to earn a combined $54 million in the same time period, so the first 2 years of their contracts. Apologies, having a little issue with lighting there. There's going to be a little bit makeshift at first. I'm going to play around with the lighting and the sound and things like that, and the setup even, so what you'll see in the background behind me is going to change as well. I'm just going to try and get to grips with the sort of setup of this, and particularly the way I do it. Like there's going to be times where I just talk to camera, which will be more passionately from the heart. There's going to be times where I'm looking a little bit more at the laptop for sort of referring to either something that's a bit more of like a script for me, or just stats and information and things like that. So this is a little bit more information based and less script based, but there's obviously going to be a written piece that comes along with this. That's what I should have done for the ESAC one as well. I'm going to go back actually and put in a written piece for the ESAC one. I'm going to make sure that goes out on Substack as well, so if you do want that straight to your email inbox, there'll be an option to get that too. So I will make sure that everybody is receiving that. But back to this, because we spoke about those figures, so massive disparity between what Caitlin Clark and Paige Beckers are going to earn in the first 2 years of their WNBA contracts compared to what Zachary Reese-Share and Cooper Flagg will earn in the first 2 years of theirs. And this is the thing, like even the biggest women's sports hater or the biggest misogynist will struggle to argue that the women earning under 0.6% of what the men earn isn't a disparity, because you consider the WNBA's revenue of roughly 144 million, if you consider the fact that WNBA's revenue of roughly 144 million is around 1.3% of the reported 11.3 billion that the NBA makes. So the disparity there is from 0.6% to 1.3%. 7% for those who are playing along here and doing the maths. So where is that missing 0.7%? When Napheesa Collier took this to the commissioner in a private conversation, she felt so disrespected that she decided to go public with how their discussion unfolded. And to be honest, I couldn't believe it when I heard what was said in this conversation. So we'll refer to the statement. So in the statement, Collier said, I asked how she planned to fix the fact that players like Caitlin, Angel and Paige, the aforementioned, who are clearly driving massive revenue for the league, are making so little for their first 4 years. Cathy's response was, Caitlin should be grateful she makes 16 million off the court, because without the platform that the WNBA gives her, she wouldn't make anything. In that same conversation, Cathy told Napheesa, players should be on their knees thanking their lucky stars for the media rights deal that I got them. And Napheesa says that's the mentality driving our league from the top. So, I mean, if we even ignore how bad the connotations are of players literally getting on their knees to thank the commissioner for now, because that's a whole different piece, which has all sorts of different connotations I mentioned. this is just a serious level of disregard for shown towards the players from the top of the organisation of the WNBA. And it's the players that have helped turn the WNBA into a global product. And I've mentioned, you go back as far as, legends like the Maya Moores, Lisa Leslie's and Dawn Staley's. It's this sort of new generation now of Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and Paige Beckers that have turned this into a real global product. The foundation was set by those trailblazers before them, but the WNBA wasn't a global product until these guys came onto the scene and started bringing huge fan bases with them. And this also flies in the face of the fact that all three of them, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese and Paige Beckers, were beneficiaries of huge NIL deals. And when there was all the reform around the NIL, where it meant that college student athletes, as they used to call them, but now they're just athletes really, can make money off their likeness. So during their college days, these three in particular were making huge revenues. There's literally a Netflix documentary which talks about how much money Angel Reese was making during her college days, and that was before they even made it to the league. So for Cathy to come out and act like the league put them on instead of the other way around is about as laughable as it is disrespectful. And I'm pleased that Napheesa is coming out and sort of showing and shedding light on how laughable that really is. Because Collier's admission of the league is more interested in money and power than standing up for its players, has led to calls now for Commissioner Cathy Engelbert to quit her job with immediate effect. There's no doubt this is an Uno reverse power play from Napheesa Collier. She was the best player in the last year's WNBA finals. And she'll be hoping now that her plea and the overwhelming support that she's received from her peers since, including Paige Beckers and Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark gave a bit of a no comment, but I don't think that's because she's playing both sides. I think that's because she wants to not let the focus be on Caitlin Clark. She wants it to stay on Napheesa Collier and on this negotiation that is, ongoing and coming up because the current collective bargaining agreement is about to expire. Napheesa will hope that this plea and the support, as I say, will strengthen their position at the negotiating table, them being the players. Also, the other sort of key thing that runs through this is that Collier is a co-commissioner. She is a commissioner of a league herself alongside Breanna Stewart, who is, of course, a reigning WNBA champion. And that boasts some of women's basketball's biggest stars, now some of the biggest WNBA stars, provides them an opportunity to earn more money playing during the off-season without needing to go abroad, which, of course, if you cast your mind back, was the first link in a chain of events that led to WNBA superstar, women's basketball superstar Brittany Griner becoming a political prisoner in Russia because she was having to go over to Russia to make sure she was still earning money in the off-season, because unlike the NBA guys who can earn their money during the season and afford to go on holiday for the entire off-season, the women can't afford to do that. They have to continue to play during the off-season. So Unrivaled has been set up in the name of player empowerment and ensuring that players get paid what they deserve. But this should worry the WNBA, to be honest, that not only their co-commissioner is coming out and slamming the commissioner of the WNBA, but what's to stop this, what is currently a 3-on-3 extracurricular basketball league, as I say, played during the off-season, from becoming a breakaway one in protest. We've seen this when, football clubs weren't happy, and, I didn't agree with the idea of a European Super League at the time. I prefer for Liverpool to stay in the Champions League for my own sort of bias and interests, but you wouldn't begrudge this sort of move of player power if they decided that Unrivaled was going to become a breakaway league, separate themselves from the WNBA and the NBA and all those things that come attached with that. And listen, it wouldn't be the first time that the NBA, who of course owns the trademark and intellectual property behind the WNBA, as I mentioned before, has had to go through a lockout because of protest over an unsatisfactory collective bargaining agreement. You think back to 2011 was the last time I think there was an NBA lockout. That was the last time they sort of failed to reach an agreement on the collective bargaining. So, if that was to happen again, there could be another lockout, and maybe it could be Unrivaled that comes to the fore because of that. So it's pretty clear whatever happens next is going to be absolutely crucial for the future of the league and potentially women's basketball as a whole now. The current collective bargaining agreement is set to expire at the end of this month, as I mentioned. So we could find out sooner rather than later the true impact of this seismic moment in sports history. For my opinion on this, I think history is going to be very kind to Napheesa Collier and to the players. I think that the women should be paid exactly the same revenue percentage as the men get in the NBA. That is, talking percentages again, the NBA makes way more than WNBA. As I say, it had a better foundation to do that. It wasn't, such a frowned upon thing for so many years. Think back to the days of the ABA even, and the NBA has been really solidified in history. The WNBA is getting to that point. It has now got a history. I've mentioned already some of the legends from the past, but it's got a future as well, and the future of it relies on these players to be superstars, global superstars, to go out and earn money that goes beyond the league, of course, but to earn money when they play for their teams too, and feel like they're getting a fair share of the revenue the league is now being able to bring in because of how much these superstars have an impact off the court. So I'll be keen to know what you think about this. If you aren't into women's basketball, I appreciate you for getting this far, for one, but this is the sort of thing that affects women's sports and sports really as a whole, because it's a move of player power ultimately. I've referenced, throughout this, that even though there is collective bargaining agreements in the Premier League and things like that, they don't sort of pertain to any of this already, but there is talk of the Premier League bringing in things like salary caps, which could see collective bargaining agreements in the future start to sort of shift towards that. I've mentioned the idea of the European Super League, and how that can pertain to the idea of a breakaway league in women's basketball. So all of these things are always interlinked, whether you watch this video and you think, well, I don't care about women's sports, or I don't care about women's basketball in particular. But listen, this is a thing that pertains to all sports, as I say. So it's going to be always these kind of things that I'm going to discuss here on the Sport Tea. As I say, always spilling the tea behind the big stories. I've not really had much of a sip of this tea. It's very, very hot. But hopefully you've enjoyed me spilling the tea here. Please like and subscribe if you are watching this on YouTube. If you're watching this on Patreon, as always, I would really appreciate your support, but also drop it a like on here. Let me know whether you're enjoying this content down in the comments, and let me know your thoughts on this story as well, because as I say, this is genuinely a seismic moment in sports history. Whatever you think about women's sports and women's basketball, this is going to be a seismic moment. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks, but plenty more content to come on this channel. Of course, it's going to be weekly uploads, which are always going to come out on a Thursday, come rain or shine, come lighting issues, come sound issues, come low light outside, because that's the sort of time of year we're getting to in the UK now. So yeah, let me know what you thought about this. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe on whichever platform you are watching this. Share it please with your friends as well. I want this content to reach as far and wide as it possibly can. So yeah, thanks very much for joining me for a brew here on the Sport Tea. As I always say, enjoy the sports, don't get bogged down by the bad actors and all these things. For my money, Cathy Engelbert is playing the bad actor in this role at the moment. She is very much playing the villain. Napheesa Collier is going to be the hero who stands out in all of this. I'll be watching Unrivaled this summer with bated breath to see what comes of all this, and whether they can sort of shift into the more sort of mainstream space, and potentially even a breakaway league space. But yeah, that's been all for me here on the Sport Tea. I hope you've enjoyed, and cheers.